Thank you all so much for being here today. Jen and I are thrilled to be co-presenting today and spending the next hour. It'll be a short and sweet and quick and engaging as we spend time with you looking at reading and writing conferences in your K-3 literacy block and some samples and suggestions for what that can look like. And we will get started. And as always, I first want to acknowledge that we're gathering virtually today from many different traditional Indigenous territories across British Columbia. And we thank our hosts for this beautiful land that we learn, work, and play on. So if you haven't met us before, I'm Lisa, and I'm the POPEY Program Manager and Teacher Consultant, and I'm co-presenting today with Jen Kelly, my lovely colleague and fellow teacher consultant. And hopefully you got our pre-workshop email with links to the handouts and the Zoom link. We're guessing you did because you're here in the Zoom room with us. But Jen also just popped the link for the print handout and the electronic handout into the chat box window. So if you did still need a handout, you can always click there and get it. Or if you have a second device, a phone or a tablet, you can scan that QR code at the bottom and that will take you out to our e-handout as well. You can also get there by our website, popey.ca. If you haven't been there yet, check us out. We've got a lot of wonderful resources, if we do say so ourselves, to support K-3 literacy. And just to let you know, we are recording the session. So that will be Jen and me speaking and our slides that we share. And we will post it to our POPEY YouTube channel next week. And there are captions available in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom if you would like to enable captioning. And so our objectives for this hour, here we are, exploring different kinds of conferences for reading and writing that include a range of strategies and coaching conversations to help us assess and support students' literacy development. So that formative assessment piece is really baked right into our conferencing. And we will look at how those can help support our students in a few different ways. So, and as always, we're looking at a bit of the theory. So we ground our workshops in the best practice current research on what's demonstrated and proven to be effective for our students to be successful. We'll share some modeling and demonstrations to see the how of what it looks like. And we'll give you time to engage with us, reflect, chat, and share and be interactive with the chat pod to make it about you and say how it might work for you in your setting, in your context, in your corner of the province, and with the students that you're supporting this year. So first of all, for us, how do we know what they know so that we can help provide them with the instructional supports, the time and opportunity to move our students forward on their literacy journey? And so we're going to look a little bit at the formative assessment piece first, but we always really like this analogy of a GPS. And really, we need to be a human GPS for our students as they're making their way through the literacy continuum from K-3. And we want to think about giving them that just-in-time individualized support, continuous progress monitoring, feedback that's good feedback that's helpful, and then course corrections when they need it, with some choices and options for them to choose and have empowerment, different routes based on their preferences or learning styles. And as always, GPS, if it's working well, it's 100%, 99% accurate, get us to where we're going on time, on the route that we want to go on. So for us, we want to think about how we can offer and provide that support and intuitive, just-in-time direction as our students navigate their learning journeys every single day in the classroom with us. And formative assessment, another way to look at it, it's more informal, and it should be informing our teaching and our next steps. So it's that more paying close attention. It's the noticing and naming what we see our students doing. And maybe sometimes that's what their strengths are. And then it's also where they maybe need some additional support. So finding that balance between strengths and next steps for our students and giving them the information and the teaching they need at the next step. So it's that just-in-time teaching to take them where they need to go to have that fluid and continuously developing learning journey. So we need it to be specific and timely so that they can make adjustments to their learning. So just like the GPS analogy we like, it doesn't do me a lot of good, and it's not that helpful for me if I find out I made a wrong turn after 7 more turns. But if Google Maps tells me right away and lets me know I made a wrong turn, I can recalibrate, recalculate, and get back on track quite quickly and easily without too much lost time or without getting too confused or too frustrated. So we like that analogy for our students to help support them. And Ruth Cullum, who's done a lot of wonderful work on writing and the 6+1 traits. This applies specifically to writing, but we think it really is lovely and speaks to all elements, not just of literacy, but of learning as well. So giving students specific constructive feedback to know what is working well. So we start with strengths and what needs improvement. So we want to build on what they know, point them to the next step. And especially when students have got off to a rocky start, their confidence might be a little shaken or they might feel unsure. So building on what they're doing well is a really wonderful place to start with to get them going in the direction that they need to. So we're going to ask you now to reflect on a time when you received some feedback and whether it was valuable or not, and why it was valuable or why it wasn't valuable. It's interesting, we see a lot of analogies and comparisons with feedback for students, and in past waterfalls, in past workshops, it seemed quite easy for a lot of people to connect with coaching. So if anybody played a sport or coached a sport at school, there's some really nice comparisons for learning, how to swing a baseball bat, and your coach or your parent giving you some tips as you're in it. So it's not after when you're home, but it's while you're engaged in the activity in that practice time. And often as adults, I think we could easily remember feedback that wasn't that valuable for us and the reasons why. And that's just as powerful a tool as the feedback that was valuable. So we just want to think about a feedback we received ourselves, maybe at school, maybe in a job, maybe in sports, and whether it was valuable or not, or why, and a connection we can make to the feedback that we give our students. So I'm going to put a 1-minute timer on here and give you a chance to reflect and type your thoughts, what you'd like to share, your reflection on feedback and its value into the chat box, but don't hit enter until the music stops. And then you can hit enter when the music ends, and we'll have a big waterfall of 120 people sharing about feedback.
Okay, timer's up. Oh, lots of wonderful, wonderful descriptions of feedback that were helpful and maybe not so helpful in the past. So thank you so much for entering those in. I can see lots of sports analogies here too, and what has worked well when you're working with students. That's so great. Oh, some of you wrote like a whole ton. How did you do that in just 1 minute? That's fantastic. So you can take a look through the chat and go back and notice where our colleagues had really positive experience with feedback and some challenges with feedback, and that's really going to help us set up what we can talk about this afternoon for how we can give that valuable feedback for our students.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I saw someone commented on yoga, and I think it's true in that the feedback coming just in time while you're engaged in the activity is so helpful and important. So it's nice to see all those connections. Thank you.
Fantastic. So as we take a look at reading conferences, we can notice the benefits of this kind of formative assessment for our students to get to know them really well. Often with a reading conference, our students are reading a passage of the text of the book that they're already reading independently. So what that does is our students are already knowledgeable with the content, with the format of the book, with the language of the book, with the characters even. So it's really a strength-based way to approach assessment and really get to know our students' strengths and what they're really understanding from the book. The best kind of assessment that we can do with our students is to have them talk about their learning, and for us to be listeners and observers and researchers, and really notice and honor where they are as a learner. It's also naturally differentiated because we're meeting our students where they are, whether they're reading an emergent book or whether they're reading a chapter book. We can dive in with them and be a guide on the side that helps them move forward from where they are to where they want to be. It also helps develop those strong relationships with our students, because it's a time for us to have that one-on-one conversation and really get to know our students as learners, and for them to get to know us as guides and coaches, rather than necessarily having the whole class instruction. So we are going to take a look at a couple of different kinds of reading conferences that address a lot of the ways that we can conference with students depending on our goals and the goals that we have for our students. So during a reading conference, what our students are doing is they're doing all the heavy lifting here. They're doing all of the reflecting, all of the most of the talking. We're doing a lot of the listening. And they can be practicing the strategies that we've taught to them personally or in the group. And what we're doing is meeting them where they are, offering new strategies, supporting and noticing the strategies that they are using so we can give that really critical, valuable feedback that's just in time. And we're working with them in a way that they are comfortable with. So what a conference is a conversation with a student where they're doing a lot of the talking, we're doing a lot of the listening, but it's not a chance to catch them with misinformation. It's a time to offer that individualized support, as I mentioned, because we have a variety of different students' abilities in our classroom. We want to have this as an individualized assessment, but it's not a time to reteach something that we've taught to the whole class. It's time for students to do the work and for us to stop talking or stop talking so much. So we can really be guides or coaches rather than doing extensive modeling, because we've probably done that with whole class setting. And this is a time for our students to do the work. And it's time to teach the reader, not a time to teach the book. So we're really focused on our students during this time. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple different kinds of reading conferences we can have with our students. So one of the ones we're going to talk about is a compliment conference, and we're going to see an example of this a little bit later on. But really what it is being very explicit, like you mentioned in the chat box with our feedback, very explicit feedback that is strength-based and gives a compliment while allowing our students to see what they're doing really well with their work. So rather than just saying, oh, nice fluent reading, you can say, your reading sounds like you speak, because you're reinforcing that with your students. That's very important, because when you read smoothly and with expression, you will understand what you read even better. So you're giving a compliment, and then you're saying why it's so important that the student is doing that and to keep doing that. So the student feels good about themselves because they've received a compliment about their reading, and you've reinforced what they're doing really well with and that you want them to keep doing. A goal setting conference is using a lot of inquiry questions to see where our students are with their reading and where we can help them, where we can coach them to have some goals to move forward. So with this one, I like to think of those sample inquiry questions at the bottom of the screen as a hierarchy of scaffolding. So if a student is really used to having a goal setting conference, you can start with a really broad open question, like, what do you notice about your work? If a student is pretty new to this kind of conferencing and needs a lot more of the scaffolded help to figure out what they should be noticing, you can go down to the bottom and say, one thing I notice is blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts? So you're really feeding them a little bit more information with the different questions that you can ask them. Okay, a coaching conference allows us to be very linked between a strategy and a prompt. So our students are very clear with what the strategy is, And our job is to prompt them to remember that strategy and to act on it. So if the strategy that you're working with your student on is look at the picture, now look at the caption, explain what is happening in the picture by looking closely at it. If our students forget that or need a reminder, our prompt can be, what are you thinking about what the caption said? So it's feeding that cycle of strategic thinking with our students. And this one, the Research Decide Teach conference, I really think of as an initial conference that we can have with our students, where we're doing a lot of asking questions and noticing things about our students, offering those compliments, and then giving our students some strategies. So we're getting a lot more information with this kind of conference in a lot of different areas. So it's a wonderful one to start with when we're starting to work with our students in conferencing. Okay, so let's take a look at Jennifer Saravello doing a quick compliment conference. So a few things that I really love about this example is that was 1 minute and 44 seconds that she had 2 reading conferences in. Students were doing the majority of the talking during that time, and she was very focused with her compliments. So you can see a really clear example of how that worked well for in this case of this demonstration. So what I want you to start to think about is considering reading conferences. Generally, we have like a comfort zone where we're really comfortable using different strategies or different assessment tools, and then a stretch zone. I want you to think about what might be in your stretch zone that you might be willing to try in the next little while. So thinking about 1 or 2 strategies that you could try in upcoming reading conference. I know for me, a comfort zone area for me is compliment conferences, but probably a coaching conference would be a little bit more into my stretch zone. So that would be something to try out and see how it feels for me and the student. So I'm going to get you to share your stretch goal in the chat box, and I'll give you 45 seconds on the timer, and then feel free to do that. Okay, so a lot of you are talking about talking less. That's really interesting. Giving the time and the voice over to your students. Wonderful. A lot of interesting specific conferences around goal setting and compliment conferences. Excellent. More wait time. I know that's so hard, isn't it? But definitely. Okay, Lisa, the workshop's brought to you by ABBA. Cute. Okay, let's continue on here. So one of the things that I really love about Jennifer Saravello's work is that it's definitely the conferencing is where the magic happens. It's just, where we get to connect with our students and develop that relationship and get to know our students as readers.
Wonderful.
Okay, writing workshop.
Thanks, Jen. So when we look at, so now we're going to shift into writing and how we can support writing our students with writing conferences. Those can be part of a writer's workshop format where we've done a mini lesson, a very short mini lesson to focus students on a specific writing skill or strategy that we want them to pay attention and practice today. So you can see there, the mini lesson is short, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. And then there's much more time for independent practice. And that doesn't necessarily mean that each student is working independently all by themselves without any kind of support or interaction. But you can see here some options. Students might be working privately. They could be working with a writing partner or in a small group. And that gives a chance for the teacher to be circulating, to do those conferring moments and those touchbacks with students to check in, maybe teach a small group, or noticing if there's oh, hang on a second, everybody, I think I wasn't clear on this, and I can see there's some misunderstandings or confusion around what to do. I'm just going to stop you, have a look. Let me just clarify what our focus is and our teaching point, and then you can get back on your way. So those mid-workshop, a little teaching moment, that also would be maybe a little bit of a course correction. And then at the end, coming back together just briefly for the students and the teacher to share out. And that is also the way to end on a positive note and a celebration, but it's reinforcing back to the beginning, to link kids back to the beginning for what the focus of the mini lesson was, and then very intentionally linking it to tomorrow and the writing that they're going to do tomorrow or next week or next month even. And so what that can look like in the classroom, whole group on the carpet, and then you see all sorts of flexible groupings and variations in that independent time where they are applying and practicing. They're actively engaged in trying out that skill or strategy. And then it comes back together with everybody together as one group to do that little celebration. So again, it's focusing on a positive and reinforcing the learning taught at the beginning. So the next one we've got is a slide that shows the mini lesson format. And this is out of the reading and writing project at Columbia University with Lucy Calkins. And 1 minute, super powerful. Again, like Jen was talking with the conferences, they're low on teacher talk time because we want to use the time and give time and opportunity for students to be actively engaged and practicing and applying what we've taught. So we really want the lion's share of time to go to the students. And that's a time when we're walking around and doing observing and noticing and having those conferencing moments. So 1 minute to make a connection to what they've already learned. So we're building on previously learned skills and strategies. We're teaching, it might just take 2 to 3 minutes to explicitly model and demonstrate a strategy. So for writing, that might be about adding detail or juicy describing words, or trying to work on varying our sentence length, or working on beginning, middle, end, or finding our voice as a writer. Lots of things, a huge range of strategies. And then active engagement while you're as a whole class on the carpet, students try it out themselves, 2 to 3 minutes. Turn and talk to your neighbor and talk about this. How could this work for you? What do you think about this with your writing? And you can check in and listen, you're paying attention, you're noticing who might need some extra support, which students are getting it and feel ready to move on. And then when you finish, like at the end, the celebration, we're going to link that to tomorrow and beyond so that the students understand the skills are transferable and open-ended, and they can apply them to any book that they're reading in the future or any writing that they do. It's not just about today's writing. And this is from Jen Saravallo's Writing Strategies book. And we really like how she lays it out, that there is a hierarchy of reading goals, hierarchy of writing goals, starting from most simple and building up in complexity and detail and sophistication as writers develop their voice and identity and skill as writers. But if we're looking at a sample here, strategies for elaborating when we're doing our writing, here's some bullet points. Each bullet point could be a little mini lesson that you spend just 7 to 10 minutes with on the carpet. So you could just have a mini lesson on dialogue and have a mentor text on hand that does a really beautiful job of showing how impactful or powerful or funny or engaging dialogue could be. You could look at reasons or information depending on the type of writing. If they're doing persuasive writing or nonfiction, you can look at different strategies. So you can just pick one, kind of like our feedback. We get overloaded if we're trying to teach. If we get feedback and too many suggestions to improve 17 things, we're going to feel discouraged and overwhelmed. So focusing in on one skill or strategy to practice and try is going to be more supportive and helpful and less daunting for our little ones. So we have a video here. This is also from the Reading and Writing Project at Columbia. And it's the kids are a little bit older. I think it's a grade 3-4 class, but we really love how this teacher, he sort of will walk us through part of the mini lesson. This is him demonstrating the connection part and the teach part. So that first 3 minutes of the mini lesson, this is him showing it in action. So he did a really lovely job of showing that. And those were with older students, but I think the similar strategy of acting it out and having a movie in your mind and him giving a demonstration that's from his life really can help make that good connection and a demonstration for the students, even with something very, very simple. So we're going to get you to do a little bit of a assessment here. And what does this student know about writing? So you can have a read of this writing sample, and we're going to put 30 seconds on the clock. I feel like Family Feud, Richard Dawson, dating myself there. We'll have 30-second timer, and then you can enter what you notice about what the student knows about writing. Excellent, you can hit enter. So you're noticing lots of really specific strategies and skills they already have. And so if you were thinking of that next step, how could that inform a conferencing moment that you might have, a little conferencing conversation? You might share, depending on if it's a compliment, you might share a compliment about what you notice they're doing well, and then give them that stretch goal, or work with them and see if they can come up with a goal for themselves of where they want to go with your support. I know in my class, I often taught K-3, and the kids really liked seeing writing samples from kids that I had from previous years. So they didn't know who it was, but I would enlarge it and we would talk through what the student had done well, and what a compliment was, and what a stretch goal was. And the kids really liked seeing other kids writing samples without it being attached to anyone in our class at the time. So it was really nice, and it was helpful for them to see a tangible, concrete example and have something to reach toward. And we've got a video about that coming up shortly. Yes, so moving through these emergent to early to fluent levels, as they develop as a writer, we want to support them and think about what are reasonable expectations and goals for them, for where they're at on this continuum, and think about what some good and simple specific strategies and skills are that we can teach them, and then have them put into practice. And in terms of the coaching and the conversation and the conferencing, we can keep it really simple and focused, and keep it positive, and empower the students to really take ownership of that conversation and help really lead those conferencing conversations with them by letting us know how they feel they're at as a writer, and maybe what they're interested in, what they feel they do well, and what their next steps could be. Thanks, Jen. So Katie Wood-Ray has this lovely quote here. We've learned that to assess the writing work of young children, we've got to be right out there in the messy, real, wonderful middle of their work. And it is messy and real, and it is wonderful. And it's amazing that our little people in primary are writing what they do. So thank you for encouraging them. So we're going to shift over now, and Jen's going to take over again.
Okay, so a wonderful place to start when we are doing a writing conference with our students is the statement, "Tell me what you're working on," because it invites our students to then focus on what they're doing well, but it also invites them to, sorry, I didn't mean to reveal that. Take ownership of their learning, take ownership of their writing, because they are telling us what they want us to notice about their writing. So they're providing us a lot of important, insightful information about their thinking. And also we can notice how they're using language. So are they using language that we've talked about in our mini lessons? Have they transferred that language from, learning it, listening to it, to then speaking it? Because that's also going to tell us a lot about their thinking. So things like, some examples are, I'm working on a sequel to my other book. So you can notice that really specific writer's language there. I'm adding strong verbs to my writing. I'm trying to show what is happening, not tell the reader. So really focusing in on the language of a writer and giving our students time and the opportunity to share with us what they know. So one example that we'd like to share with you today is using a writer's wall. So this teacher describes how she's using a writer's wall to really show progression through each individual student, but also how she uses it as a place of celebration, a place where all students are writers in the classroom, and where they can notice other students as writers. So that was a good way to look at how we can be really focused with our students' work, how it provides that individualized progression, but also how it allows for those continual conversations with students about conferencing. So why did you choose this piece of writing to celebrate today? And then of course with our parents, and then of course as a formative assessment tool as well. So lots of great things that you can do with a writer's wall there. And you had some really good ideas in the chat box as well. Thank you for that. Okay, so another way that we can really utilize student work as exemplars, to have a third point that we can talk about with our students during a conference, is a writing continuum. So we can really have a writing continuum that shows clear examples of what students can do and what is the next step in writing to move them forward. So what I like about this is, again, it's really strength-based. Using a writing continuum is what success looks like and what is the student able to do. So it's very clear that they can use the writing continuum exemplar as a third point, look at it, learn from it, and then see how it compares to their writing sample. So it's really providing that evidence. It's allowing our students to learn the language of writers again, so that they can start to internalize the writing process, and really allows them to see what is perhaps needed to move to the next step during a writing continuum. So to use that as a place of conference is a very powerful way to help our students to see exactly what their strengths are as writers. So you can see here, this example that I've just put up, even our emergent, really young writers have a place on our writing continuum. They're all represented on our writing continuum. So even here, as our student is starting to make those explicit sentences out of the curly writing, you can see that they are talking about connecting ideas through this piece of writing. They're using curly writing to represent thoughts. They already know so much about being a writer at this very early stage. So let's see what this looks like in practice. So this is going to be a little mini conference that a teacher is having with a couple of students, where they're going to talk about their writing in comparison to a writing continuum. So what I really like about this example is that the students were doing all of the talking. The teacher was just asking a few questions, but they were providing evidence. They were saying what they needed to do to make their writing better. They were identifying where they thought they were on the writing continuum. So very heavy student voice, student talking, and we're just listening and learning and getting our students to identify, notice, and naming where they are in their writing continuum. Okay, so one of the ways that you can set the scene for writing conferences or a writing workshop is, this is Faye Brownlee's work on status of the class. It's a routine that she recommends that allows our students to be responsible and accountable for their writing during a time when it's more of an open-ended writing activity. So a student at the beginning of a writing workshop time, then you would do a really quick status of the class. Each student can let you know what they are doing. Are they starting a new composition? Are they continuing a composition? Do they want help? Or are they working on second draft, third draft, whatever this looks like in your classrooms? So you can see at a glance, we have Steve is asking for a conference to help with a topic. And that's what he's doing on October 1st. And then on October 8th, he has decided on a conference, a topic, and it's about skiing. So it just helps you keep track, but it also allows our students to vocalize where they are with their writing, take ownership again of what they are going to do during this writing time, and and some accountability as well. So this allows you to circulate, allows educators to circulate throughout the class and have those short conferences with students. Now, it's recommended that we focus on meaning first, so our students get the idea that meaning is the most important part of our writing. So not punctuation, not spelling, but the meaning first. We can really dig into that with our students, and it honors the work that they've been doing as writers, and it empowers them that they have a message that they can put down on paper and share with other people. And it's incredibly empowering for our students to be able to get to that place where they can write for others and have their writing shared. So it might be that our students need help with, leading a story or having a great beginning, some detail, the ending, something to do with maybe one of the recent mini lessons that we've done with our students. So again, you can take really short notes about each student's focus, accountability for them, and also as a formative assessment for you and a reminder for you, so that if you don't do writing workshop for a week, you can go back and remember, oh yeah, Steve is on his second draft. He's writing about skiing. He used a question for a lead, and we talked about how he could show, not tell, the feeling of skiing. And then he came up with some triple scoop words. So you can see how specific and timely that kind of feedback is, so that you have that in your documents and that you can go back and show the student that you're honoring their work, that it's important, and that they are accountable to that. So when you're conferencing, you can consider what's working, what's not, what's next. Really simple. Oh, there's a lovely graphic to make that a little bit more easier for you to read. Okay, so here's another idea that I've used with older primary students, and it's something that I've used to really give ownership again over to students to identify parts of their writing that they want me to notice, and also again have them notice different aspects of their writing that are there or maybe absent. So this is like a whole class revision process, or a whole class identifying process, I would even say, where you have your students do all the heavy lifting for you, rather than getting a whole ton of stories for you to mark and identify different aspects of their writing. You can have them identify different things. So you can say in your piece of writing, put a box around 3 words that are triple scoop words, because we've just had a mini lesson about that using Adrian Gear's stuff, and look in your writing and look for those triple scoop words. Now that's also naturally differentiated for our students, because we could have students writing at a very emergent level, and for those students, a triple scoop word is going to look different from a student writing at a grade 3 level. So again, naturally differentiated, and we can have our students identify different aspects in their writing. You can have them put stars beside transition words. I love using sticky notes during this time, because students love getting access to sticky notes. So you can say on a sticky note, write how you hooked your reader with your beginning. So again, here's the example at the bottom. With my family, the writer said, I hooked my reader by talking about what I do with my daddy. So for other students that are writing at a more advanced level, they might be talking about an interesting lead, like a question. And we're really giving ownership over to our students. And the thing that I love about this one, underline your favorite sentence, and on a sticky note, explain why it's your favorite. Again, what do you want me to notice about your writing? Talk to me about your learning. So lots of cool things that you can do with that. And again, you're getting your students to do all the heavy lifting here. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, but we're going to just talk about documentation, what it can look like. So a couple of ways we're doing all this work with our students around conferencing, and we want to make sure that we can document it and refer back to it when we're formatively assessing and summatively assessing our students. So you can keep, this is a really easy way, keep a binder with separate pages for each student in your class, And then just as you're conferencing, walk around with a sticky notepad and really quickly write down some comments. And then you just do as many conferences as you want to or can, and then you can put them into the pages when you get back to your desk when you have the time. So very little organization needed, which I love as a teacher. It's just thinking of how can I make this easier for me to do? And another way that you could have a really easy way to document is to have a binder with dividers for each student, and then just carry around your binder really quickly, date, observation, action plan, next student, and you just have that with you, that binder with you at all times so that you can refer back to it. Because as much as we know, we think we are going to remember about each student and their action plans and observations, at the end of the day, it's very difficult. Okay, so I love thinking about this idea of imagine if we didn't engage babies in conversations until they could correctly pronounce whole sentences. Think about that. What we want to do with our readers and our writers is engage youngsters in the real work of writing and reading until they can accurately write whole sentences. That's how we get them to take risks. That's how we get them to see themselves as writers and readers. So as a final reflection, what we've looked at in the past hour, which was a lot, I feel like I've been talking a lot, is the different kinds of conferences, the complement, goal setting, all of those different kinds of conferences, and the mini lesson format that Lisa introduced to you on reading and writing strategies, that whole format that allows you to really have that time set aside for working with students, and how we can use that formative assessment support for our students, how we use feedback, how we use a writing continuum. So how might you incorporate conferencing into your literacy block? Or if you could pop into the chat box, this would be really interesting. What's one kind of conference that you could try out in the next week, or something that we did here today that we talked about? So I'm going to let you do that. I'll share with you here. These are the sources that we used to build your workshop today. And if you have the e-handout, these all link out. And if you don't have the e-handout, you can easily access it through our POPEY website by going to poppy.ca, clicking on the professional learning watering can, and clicking on POPEY e-handouts, and it should be linked out right there.